Hello and welcome. With us today is Michael Murphy, former Force Recon Scout Sniper, registered nurse, naval officer in charge of Quantico Medical Clinic. He's a keynote speaker and studying to become psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. He's a business owner, a husband, and a father of 5. Michael, how are you doing today?
Good. You got it all, Brett. Sounds good.
Got it. That's a mouthful. You got a lot going on there. So tell us a little bit more. I kind of just gave a broad overview, but can you tell us a little bit more about what you do today?
Yeah. So currently I run a medical clinic. It's at the basic school in Quantico, Virginia. What we do here is all of the Marine Corps officers that come through their basic training after either OCS or an academy, they come here for a 6-month pipeline. We just provide the care for them. Some of the biggest patients that we see are heat injuries. We cover primary care, things like that. But what has really opened my eyes is some of the mental health stuff that we see here. And that's what kind of, I think, brought me here with you today is a lot of the steps that I've made within mental health. I've kind of stepped outside of my roles and taken more of a mental health advocate approach to my nursing. And as well, I'm finishing that psychiatric nurse practitioner program right now. So it's just kind of taking over everything that I do.
Awesome. So that sounds like quite the story there, going from Force Recon Scout Sniper to mental health advocate in the nursing field. How did that happen?
Oh man. So yeah, that's a great topic. And so ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a recon Marine. Like I knew a couple growing up. We had family members that were SEALs, and they said, like, hey, if I could go back, I'd have done recon Marines. Like, those guys are great. So it was like, just a childhood dream. And I actually lived it. It was great. I actually joined the Marine Corps and became an infantry Marine. And it's funny, I did that when I was 17 years old, and I had told my mom that I wanted to join the Marine Corps. And in order to join at 17, you have to get your parents to sign a waiver. My mom's like, no way. And so I talked to the recruiter, and I'm like, hey, listen, I really want to be a Marine. The Iraq war is going on. This isn't something that my mom's going to sign off on. What do you think? And so she said, I came to her, and I had a contract that was for a helicopter mechanic. And I was like, Mom, check it out. I'm going to work on helicopters and be safe. I won't deploy. I won't do anything like that. She signed it. And then I went to MEPS and I said, hey, I want to be infantry. And of course they're like, yeah, of course, not a problem, So anyways, I went on through the Marine Corps. I did several deployments with infantry and recon. And the wars kind of died down a little bit, and I started looking at getting out. And I realized, even though I had done all of these things and been to all of these schools while I was in, I didn't want to just continue carrying a gun forever. And I wanted to figure out how I could do more good in the world. And I had met a CRNA, so a nurse anesthetist that do anesthesia. And I met them on a deployment. One of the smartest people I've ever met. And I mean, they could do everything. Whenever anything was hard in the aid station, like, that's who they went and got. And I was like, I want to do that. So Marine Corps led me to that. And I talked to him, and he said, put in for the nursing program. I wasn't all about that. I mean, I was a Force Recon Marine. I don't want to be a nurse, that was never on the agenda of what I wanted to do. But I mean, at that time, I honestly had like no compassion, that is a learned trait. I promise. And it was not something that I learned growing up. My childhood was preparing me to be a Force Recon Marine. And then now I'm trying to take on one of the most highest compassion career fields that there is. But so I joined. They had told me what I had to do was I had to go to nursing school, become a nurse, and then get into anesthesia. Well, once I got in order to get into anesthesia, that's a 12-month in an ICU, and I could never get that. I kept getting pulled back into the ER as a trauma nurse, and so I kind of got stuck. And But in the ER, while I was there, I kept finding myself because I started at Camp Lejeune and then I ended up at Fort Belvoir. And I kept finding myself being the one that patients would talk to in mental health. They'd come in and, everyone else they'd shut down with, but I'd come in and I'd be like, hey, like, I get what you're going through. These are military hospitals. These mental health issues either stem from childhood trauma, which we could check the box on, or combat trauma. And I'll sit down and we'll have that real discussion. Like, I'll talk to you man to man. And I realized that people were opening up to me. Once I got to Quantico, it just amplified, because now I'm in my home environment. Now I'm with the Marines, and the type of Marines that I serve with. Most of the guys here on this side of Quantico are infantry coming from the fleet, coming from deployments, and this is kind of a tour of a break, if you will. It's an opportunity to be an instructor or something like that. So it's time for them to take that breath that I had to take, and you start thinking about everything. And so they come into my office and I'm able to talk to them, and we're having these conversations. So now that led me on this whole road of mental health, which led to the psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner program, which is what I'm doing now. So that's kind of how career-wise it all got there, but there's a lot more personal stuff that I think we'll talk about as well.
Yeah, that's kind of, I picked up on something when you said that. You said you were not prepared with, you were not trained in compassion. You didn't
Right.
have that kind of, but you noticed that a lot of people were coming to you.
Yeah.
And that makes me think that if it wasn't a trained compassion, there must have been something else. And if it wasn't something you got in the Marines, it must have been something that came prior.
Right.
So where do you think that connection came from?
Well, so I had a pretty intense dad growing up. Not that he was, anything wrong. I had an intense dad. My upbringing, and it wasn't dad, it was more community. I mean, I grew up in small farm town, Virginia. To be a man was to be a man, it's rub some dirt on it and keep going type childhood.
Grew up on a ranch in Oregon, so
Exactly. And so there wasn't a whole lot of like, let's hang out and give each other hugs and talk about our feelings. I mean, the feelings, either I'm awake or I'm asleep, and then you got to be tough.
I ain't dead.
And that was, but that right there, that suppression of feelings was my superpower when I was in the Marine Corps, right? Like I was too dumb to quit anything. I was gonna pass everything. There was no quit in me, and I was able to do any mission, do anything, because I was able to suppress those feelings. But then you grow up and you have families, and this is what happens to a lot of Marines, a lot of service members, not just Marines, but you have families. And now what was very good in the Marine Corps and was very good in combat is not good in the house, and with a wife and small kids and bringing that home. And, at that time, a lot of it was back-to-back deployments. You'd get home, you get your 10 days of post-deployment leave, you'd spin around and you'd get ready for another deployment. And so you just never really had time to decompress or bounce back from the last deployment. And so you kind of never left that mentality. You didn't want to leave that mentality. That mentality just kept you alive on the last deployment. I've needed to keep me alive on the next deployment. And here's this interim where I have to be home and pretend like I'm a husband and father for 6 months before I go do it again. And so there was a lot of struggles that I didn't realize were struggles. And my wife did. She'd tell you, but the compassion, the feelings like that were suppressed because I didn't need them. They got in the way, I always had the mentality of taking care of the guys that I served with, sure, but like to the point of compassion, I mean, I didn't even have it at home. It was just very straightforward, you know, and I was raising my kids the same way at that point. Like I was raising them as you would as a sergeant of Marines, just like my dad had raised me.
At this point, was it something that you like couldn't feel even if you wanted to, or is it something that you were just, you had practiced so long to just ignore it?
That's a great question. I don't know. I just talked to my therapist about that the other day. I don't know if it was there or it was not, but it was not there. You know, it was something I always viewed it as a weakness, right? It was a weakness to be compassionate, to be empathetic. And it just wasn't something I wanted to define myself. So whether it was there, I wasn't going to allow it to come out, you know?
Yeah, I actually dealt with something very similar in my youth. I think for me, it was something that I dealt with someone who had like zero emotional regulation.
Yeah.
And so on two sides of it, one, I had to keep myself, I had to like basically have military bearing from the time I was like 3 years old. Because like no matter what happened, I can't let it phase me or it's going to make it worse. But the other side of it was I learned that it was bad, it was unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And so on both ends of that, for me, I learned to just shut it off. And so, but it was chaotic, it was unsafe. And so all of that, I learned to shut it off. And for me, I actually got to the point where I couldn't feel it even if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And that definitely took some time in therapy and working through kind of making a safe space for that to come out. But some similar things there. So that's kind of where you started. And then from there, you started moving into like after you got married and you started realizing that, oh, this used to be a strength and now it's holding me back.
Yeah.
Where did you go from there?
Well, definitely not right away. And I mean, there's a lot of layers to this, but right away. So we had 2 sons right out of the gate. I mean, we had within a year and a month, we had our first son. And then a year after that, we had our second son. And there was a deployment in between there and a deployment before there. So it was this rapid succession of deployments. And then I'd get home and see my kid. I met my first son when he was 3 months old. You know, I mean, it's just like, hey, great to meet you. I had a couple schools I had to go to, a pre-deployment. I went right back on deployment right after my next son was born, you know, weeks after I'm back on deployment. And I kept doing that. I kept jumping on deployments, but it got to the point, and that was one of the driving factors. I did want to be a good family man. I just didn't really know how with the career that I had, with the deployment cycle. Like I didn't know how to juggle all of that. And so there was a time where I called home. My boys were probably 3 years old at the time, 2 and 3. And I wanted to talk to them and they wouldn't talk to me. And this went on for probably a month and a half where I would call every day and they wouldn't talk to me. They didn't want to talk to me. And I'd hear them in the background. My wife would try to keep me from it. You know, she wouldn't tell me, but I could hear them and they'd say, no, Dad doesn't ever come home. I don't want to talk to him. And I'm like, man, like, is this really who I'm going to be and how I'm going to be? Because I was loving life. Like, don't get me wrong. I loved being a Marine. That was all I wanted to be. What I was doing was what I wanted to be. And so I thought that it was the career that needed to change. And that was my out. I looked at it and I was like, you know, the only way that I can be a good family man, the only way I can be a good father, a good husband is I have to change careers. I've got to completely wipe clean, even though this is what I love more than anything. Like I have to drop it and move on with something new. And so that's what I did. You know, that's when I jumped at this, and this opportunity came. It was a commissioning program, and I did that. And a lot of guys commended me for it. A lot of guys, you know, talk down on me. It's when you leave the community, it's like, hey, if you're leaving and you're not just getting, if you get out, that's fine. If you're leaving, like, hey, how dare you leave the community, right? But a lot of guys did commit. They're like, hey, that's great, man. You're like actually trying to put your family in front, and that's awesome.
Was that hard going? Was the kind of the culture difficult to leave with knowing that you're going from a like sniper force recon into more of a healthcare nursing? I assume that there was some difficulty with that, with the culture. And
perfect segue. So that was when I said I thought that it was the career that needed to change. It wasn't. There are great Marines that are great dads and great husbands. You know, it was the fact that when I was home, I was spending every second trying to further my career. I never stepped back. When I was face to face with them, I wasn't present at all. And so I cross over into the Navy thinking, hey, here we go. Now I'm setting myself up. I'm getting school. My schedule's better. They don't deploy as much. This is all going to be better. I get through everything and in there. And all that I did was I robbed myself of my identity that I had been leaning on forever. I was drinking more than I ever had been. And I was drinking while I was in the Marines, but now to suppress those feelings of that identity loss, and the fact, I mean, I just lost my job that I loved. I didn't lose it. I left it. I left the job that I loved, lost my identity, and no one's happier at home. You know, now I've got a daughter. I've got the 2 sons, my wife, and they're still like, you know, nothing changed. I'm still not present. I'm still like, I'm now physically home, but I'm not present for them at all. I'm coming home. I'm still immediately jump back into, okay, how can I be the best naval officer? How can I be the best in this clinic or the best whatever I'm doing? I'm signing up for every school. I'm doing everything that I can. And then I'm drinking a lot. And that I definitely
I can imagine just there being so many different areas in there, especially there's a lot of especially a lot of men, although I assume women deal with this as well, but this not only having poured your life into this one career field, but it also kind of being for a lot of guys, it's like the ultimate career field. Like this is the epitome of what it means to be a man. You were doing that, at least like kind of this is the view of it. And then you let go of that in order to pursue this other thing, and then you're just not experiencing what you hope to experience. Like and like not only have you let go of this huge part of what your identity had been, but also you're not experiencing the thing that you let it go for. I can imagine that just being a really hard time for you.
Oh, it was very challenging. And another thing that happened was I realized that throughout my Marine Corps career, I could often lean on my accolades. Like I could say, well, I did this deployment. I got this medal. I was in this platoon. Whatever it was, like I could lean on that, and that carried me forward. Once I got over into the Navy, I lost all those accolades because Navy medicine didn't know what any of that was. Like they didn't know, nor did they care, because either you're good at your job now or you're not. And that's what we care about. You're junior now. Well, I'm not junior. I've been in almost 13 years, but now I'm junior. So now I'm a junior sailor, junior naval officer. And just starting from scratch with, you know, my ego got the best of me there for a while. And like you said, like I had come over here to do a certain thing. And that's where I really struggled with the CRNA thing, because now the walls are getting put in front of me. I can't lean on anything to be like, yeah, but I've done this. So can you give me that? Because no one cared, and nor should they. And it was almost like if I had transitioned out of the military. I mean, I was starting from scratch and I didn't have anything to lean on again. And I certainly struggle with that greatly. And that's what I didn't realize it at the time, but now it gives me such credibility when I'm talking to guys that are getting out or guys that have gotten out, because I've been through that struggle, like that identity crisis, that loss of identity. That's a real thing. And it's when you lose that and you had it at the top level and you just completely wipe it clean, like that's challenging. So yeah, absolutely.
And then as well at home doing that, where you're experiencing it in your career, where you had this like essentially restart and it's not panning out how you hoped, and then you're trying to do that at home as well, or you tried to hit the reset button, you tried to like, okay, I'm gonna do this a new way, and it's still not panning out. And so where did that take you next? Is that when you started trying out therapy, or what kind of clued you in that it wasn't the job, it was something that you needed to work on?
I wouldn't admit it. So we went on for a long time, years, 2-3 years of just this living in that realm of, hey, it's going to be better next year. You know, hey, let me get this certification and it'll be better next year. I just kept going to school. I just kept getting college degrees. I'm like, here, once I get this degree, then it's going to be better. And then it wasn't. And then I'd say, okay, well, this next one. And nothing was taking in for me at all. As far as like me realizing, you know, anyone who came at me and said, Mike, you know, I think you're suffering with this. I think you're drinking too much. I think this, it was, they had the problem. I don't have a problem. Like, you have a problem with my drinking. I don't have a problem with my drinking. And that kept happening. I kept suppressing those feelings with drinking more and more and more. And it took my wife and kids left me. Like, my wife had given me the ultimatum. She said, Mike, either quit drinking or I'm leaving. But I couldn't quit drinking. I could not. Like, it had gotten to the point where I was saying,
it was the medication that you needed.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say, like, okay, I'm going to stop. But I could not drive past a gas station. I couldn't go anywhere. I mean, it got me. And I never would have thought that, because in the back of my head, I always thought, hey, like, I can quit this anytime. You know, I don't know why everybody has a problem with it. So they left. And, you know, I didn't know really what to do. I mean, luckily that was as low as my rock bottom got, because there's a lot lower. But the first thing that I did was reach out to a team guy, like a guy that I actually served with. I don't know why. I reached out to him, and I'm like, man, I'm suffering. Like, I'm so glad that I made that phone call, because that was that point. I mean, of course, I'm at home drinking. My family has now left me. They're gone. Like, I was on my way to a statistic right there. You know, thoughts are racing, and for whatever reason, I contacted a friend, and it was the right friend. You know, it wasn't even a guy I was close with. It was super weird. But so I reached out to this guy, and I was like, I need to quit drinking now. And he's like, good, come to AA with me tonight. I'm like, what? You go to AA? You know? And so we go, and he took me to AA, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I didn't even know people were sober. Like, people in our community, and you know, they are there. It was full of guys just like me. Like, okay, well, people are sober. And then we start talking. He's like, hey man, have you ever been to therapy? You know? And I'm like, no, my wife has told me to for years, but I really don't think any of that stuff affects me. You know, like any of the deployments, any of the training, I don't think any of it affects me. And he's like, well, just try it out, you know, go to therapy. So that's when it all really kicked off. It was like, I mean, it took a drastic measure for my family to leave, for me to go, okay, maybe I do need to look inward. Because like I said, meanwhile, I'm telling patients all the time, hey, this is what you should do. You should go talk to people. You should get help. You should go to therapy. But I'm not doing it myself at all, because I didn't think that I had any issue. So that's how everything kind of kicked off into the mental health realm.
Wow. I'm sorry that you went through that. And you say that could have gone much lower, but I think it's all relative. Everyone's rock bottom is their own rock bottom, and you can't compare pain. What you went through was really difficult, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So you started working with a therapist. They started helping you. Did it ultimately go back to the military stuff, or was it more stuff childhood? If you don't mind talking about that.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a culmination, of course, certainly. The big eye opener though was I always had alcohol to blame, and that's where I think a lot of service members is I have these feelings, I have these thoughts, I have these fights with my wife, I'm mean to my kids, I have all that. It's because I'm drinking, and I'll quit. I'll just quit drinking. That's not a problem, you know. And then they can't, and that's where it becomes a repetitive cycle. You know, that's how you become an alcoholic, and you know that's how you remember it. But what happens when you take away the alcohol? And that's where I needed a therapist, because now all of those things that I drink away, all of those feelings, I didn't have any medicine for. Like I had to face them. And that was initially what came up. What came up was, okay, why do I feel this way? Why is my pride and ego so big that I don't think that I can start from the bottom? You know, that's a great place to start. Like, let's look at why you feel like you're entitled to all of this, and why you're dealing with this identity crisis. What are your expectations of yourself? What are your expectations of your kids, of your wife? None of those were realistic. I expected all of my kids to be perfect. I expected to come home to a model home every day, everyone, you know, standing there online waiting to receive me coming home from my hard day of work. It's just these unrealistic expectations. That's what I had initially had to work through. And I realized that a lot of that, like a lot of us, stem from PTSD. All of the pulling myself away from everything, all of the suppression of feelings and all that came from PTSD. Whether it's childhood or combat didn't really matter. It was PTSD. And it was the way that I dealt with it was to drink. And I absolutely never would have talked about it, especially in like a setting like this. So that was the biggest barriers that we had to break through, was why I'm feeling like this and validating what would make me feel like this. One of the biggest things, and I speak to this in symposiums a lot. In 2008, I was on a deployment in Iraq, and when we came, I'm sure it's probably similar now, but during the height of like the Iraq War, you would go to boot camp with a couple hundred guys, and then the ones that were infantry, they would bus you to your school of infantry, and then you would all go through together. And then from there, you would then get a duty station. So you would go from boot camp to school of infantry to the duty station with the same guys. And one of these guys in particular was one of my very close friends. We had about a group of like 6 or 8 of us that were really close, really tight knit. And so remember, I joined when I was 17. So I'm in Iraq when I'm 18, and I guess I just turned 19 and one of those buddies died. And I was one that had to open the door and receive him. That was tough, you know, that was really challenging to see one of your best friends, you know, truly one of your best friends die. To deal with that, I just tried to deploy more. And then when I wasn't deployed, that was leading to, okay, I don't want these thoughts. I don't have these intrusive thoughts. I sleep better when I drink. And that's what led to the drinking. I didn't talk about that for what, 12, 13 years. I mean, I never brought it up. It was just, I just suppressed it for 12 or 13 years. And I had convinced myself that it didn't affect me at all. Plus all the other many things that happened. But that one in particular was something that, like, of course that affected you. And why would anybody ever think that I was weak for bringing that up? Anybody that hears you had one of your best friends die and you witnessed right there him dead, that's going to affect somebody, and it's okay for it too. But at that point in time, I didn't believe that, you know.
And you're probably in a culture where, like, not only is, like, you're in the middle of war, and so the site itself is common, and so the way that people around you might view it might kind of feel like, okay, dismissive, but also a lot of the people you're with were probably 18, 19, 20-year-olds, don't know how to handle that themselves. And so it's kind of this reinforcement of, you need to just grow up and be a man, and no one knows how to do that in a healthy way. Does that reflect some of what you went through with that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's the stigma in the military, you know. That always was the stigma in the military of, hey, you joined, like, you're here, that's the expectation, you do the job and you go home. And it's been generations of that, right? I mean, we've seen it with all of the wars, and then they come home, and do we take care of them? Do we not? You know, I don't know. But the stigma in the military is not just, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want my guys to my left and right to think that I'm struggling with it, even though they're struggling with it too, right? But if we're all quiet, then nobody's struggling with it. I'm definitely not going to take it up the chain, because then what if they pull me out? So that was the thought back then, was you're going to get sent home. No, I want to be. Stigma is, okay, well, if I bring it up now, then they're not going to send me on the next deployment, and that's what, you know, or they're going to take my security clearance. Not true. It's never going to happen. But they're going to take my security clearance. I'm not going to be able to do this job anymore. These are all the stigmas that were coming up when my job is to get back from this deployment, bring that experience, pick up another rank, and become a higher level leader on the next deployment. How can I do that if I raise my hand and say, hey, I'm struggling with what I dealt with last deployment? So the stigma is, you can't. And it's this repetitive cycle of guys who deal with trauma, suppress it, and then move forward and take higher levels of leader. So we would prefer to suppress these feelings and just struggle silently than to deal with it and actually be better leaders, you know?
Yeah.
But that was the stigma at the time.
It's a self-reinforcing cycle where the people who do that often tend to promote, and then that just affects the culture even more, because now leadership is like that. And just like it keeps filtering and refining and making that more and more that way. Thankfully, I think that there's been a lot of movement that have been trying to undo that in the forces, but it's definitely not where it needs to be. But I'm thankful for the movement that has happened to try to undo that.
It's huge. It is huge right now. The conversations that we are having right now, in and around the military, our higher level leaders are making it a point. We have colonels in the Marine Corps that go to behavioral health clinics just to sit for a half hour during lunch, just to show their Marines that it's okay. I'm here too. I do it too. They're not even, they're there reading a magazine. They're not even there for an appointment. But if we have leaders that are stepping forward and saying, hey, look, it's okay, then we're making it the norm. And I think that year 2024, year 2025, that's where we're at. I mean, it's become the norm. We're realizing with these suicide rates climbing and all of that, that maybe there's more that we can do. Maybe we can talk about this, you know, and it's not only on leadership. Leadership has a part, sure, but what are the stigmas, and how do we break those barriers? Is the stigma the fact that I think I'm going to lose my security clearance? Great. Get the security manager out there to talk to everyone. Tell him they're not. Tell him the one story that he's heard in 30 years is someone losing their security clearance. Bet it had nothing to do with mental health, you know?
I think another part of it is my wife is also, she's Army officer, and she and I talk a lot about the difference between a deployed mentality and a garrison mentality, and how I think partially because our current culture was really formed in a time of war, where like you're in deployment and there's a certain mentality that needs to happen when you're surviving, when you're out there dodging bullets, and like, okay, you just need to shut up and go. But I think a big part of the issue, like there's a time where that's necessary. When the bullets are flying, maybe that's necessary.
Right.
But what about when you return home? What about when you're no longer in a deployed environment and that mindset is still driving the train? Whether in an individual or in a garrison or larger group level.
Yeah.
And I think that's where there really needs to be a culture shift, a mindset shift of like, okay, that was deployment. This is when you're at home. And now we're focusing on how do we repair, how do we fix, how do we build you up so that we can repair the damage from the last deployment and prepare you for the next deployment. And that, I think we haven't quite made that shift, I think, in the military. And I definitely think it needs to happen.
Well, I think one other shift that needs to happen is getting those that are in positions like me, those within the communities that make the call, if you're going to give someone a diagnosis and that diagnosis is actually going to ground them, because we say that, hey, you can go get treatment and it's not going to affect you. And for the most part, that's true. But there are diagnoses and there are medications that may limit you. So I think breaking through the red tape is releasing those restrictions. I would much rather have somebody, because what are they going to do? They're just going to not get help, right? Okay, I know that's what I have. I'm just not going to go talk about it. Well, now we're in that repetitive cycle where, okay, well, he's going to keep climbing. And now we would rather have this guy in this position undiagnosed without treatment than let's give him a diagnosis and treat him, take care of him, and still allow him to climb. So that's one shift that we are looking at in a lot of areas. But another thing that I think that people really want or would really benefit from is true primary prevention. So by definition, that means getting to them before they have a problem, right? That's like giving someone an immunization. There's no immunization for suicide. There's no immunization for PTSD. So how do we get to them before? Everything that we create, this is worldwide, is expecting them to walk through the door and come see me, right? That's not prevention. I'm not preventing anything. They took it on themselves to come through the door to get the help. That's not primary prevention. Primary prevention is getting out to them first. So ideas would be more better prepare them. Just like we prepare people for combat, prepare them for returning. Prepare them before they go to combat for returning. Be ready.
My wife calls it prehab.
Yeah,
you prehab them for
that.
Deployment and for all the stuff that they're going to go through.
Yeah, give them the treatments, give them the modalities, show them techniques, show them that they can, pet some horses, go plant some gardens, do things like that, go fishing, talk to people, meet with people. If we can normalize it before deployment, now it doesn't look like this is something you do when you're struggling. This just becomes something you do. This is something we did before deployment. It's something we did when we were on deployment, and we're doing it after deployment. It's just a normal thing. That's the way to get them in. The other way would be we expect people to sign up. We do like periodic health assessments and things, and we expect to catch people there. Well, what does everyone do on those? They answer the questions right enough to where they can get on that next deployment. But we know what our Marines, sailors, airmen have gone through. We were there with them on the deployment. We know what they dealt with. So go ahead and just send them. Send them somewhere. Here's here's something. There's organizations out there, there's cultures who, when you are in an organization and you experience something bad, whether it's a personal trauma or something there, they have organizations and respite centers and things set up for you to go and just take a couple days to yourself. But what do other organizations do? Hey, that's bad that happened. Go home, spend some time alone in your house for a day or two, and then come back to work on Monday, and we'll get right back at it, you know? So now you just told that person to go alone. They don't have any social network. You didn't give them any techniques or modalities, and then they're back at work, you know, the place that likely caused or triggered the trauma in the first place. So I think a couple of those ideas, and there are a lot of things coming down the pipe, both in the military and private sector. I mean, a lot of veterans have realized, like yourself, a lot of veterans have realized the need for this. And there's a lot of companies out there that are trying to provide these services. I really think that the next year or two, we're going to normalize these discussions a lot more.
Yeah, I really hope so, because it is. I think that would be a great way of doing it as well, with just bringing in those resources as a matter of course. Like, this is like, just like all the other training you do, just like all the other stuff you do coming off of deployment. Like, this is just one more thing that we do. It's just like, everyone's going to go through this because everyone went through that. Now everyone's going to go through this, and it's just part of our decompression. It's just part of everything we do. And that would be an absolutely.
Wouldn't that be cool?
I mean, it would be logical. I feel like it would be culturally easy to just have, like, to just put it as like, this is one more thing in your training. If you were to slip it in that way, if you were to put it as here's this separate thing that we're going to make you go do, I think it'd be a lot harder to kind of implement that culturally and all of that. But if you kind of just slipped it in with, here's all the other stuff that we're doing, this is just part of it, I think that would be a really good idea to just kind of integrate that. That would be awesome.
You don't think a 3-hour PowerPoint would work, you know? I mean, that's what it's always been.
Yeah. Maybe they should have a civilian run it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe a veteran. That'd probably be best. But someone such as yourself, you're not a veteran, but someone who's been through the transition, but you kind of have an outside view of it. So how did that? So we've talked about your history, and right now you are currently studying to be a what's the acronym here?
Psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I assume after you were in it for a while with your therapist, you started seeing the benefit, and you started getting the idea to start pursuing this, or how did that happen? And where are you now with this?
So, I mean, that was the biggest thing. Was I started making these breakthroughs with my own mental health, and realizing, all right, it's okay to be sober. That was step one, you know, get sober, get my family back, which I did. And so then it was realizing how much just talking about it, getting it out there. When you go to AA, you see a lot of people who are super vulnerable, right? And I was realizing that there was something to that vulnerability. Like, that's how they were healing. They were having conversations with other people, and other people were there to help them. They were building this network of people who were helping people. And here we are in the military. We have people that are there for you. We just don't open the dialogue. We don't have the conversations. So I started doing that. I started just having conversations, whether I was in clinic or not in clinic. I would just have the conversation, like, hey, how's everything going? Great. Yeah, okay. You know, now that we're past that, now let's have a real conversation, you know? And I would dive into those questions. I'd ask hard questions. You know, how much are you drinking? What do you do on the weekends? You know, I wouldn't be as blunt about it, but I would work my way in. And I was realizing that when I was vulnerable, and I would say, hey, you know, I had struggles with this. Like, I get it. If you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. And a lot of times I was really well received. And I just had a lot of people open up to me, and I was able to help a lot of people and have just such gratification of that. And that's when I realized, like, okay, this is where I was supposed to be. I mean, it's a similar gratification as I had when I was a Force Recon Marine. I mean, I absolutely loved it, and I felt like everything I did was for good. Now here I am, those several years where I struggled and I couldn't find my purpose. I really couldn't. The purpose was so I could have a better family life, and I'd completely bombed at that. But once I found that, hey, I can actually help people out, that's what led me on to it. So what led me on to pursuing that degree, because you don't have to have the degree to do that. I could pull any patient I want in as an RN. That's kind of the great thing about being an RN, is you can do as much or little as you want, as long as it's within your scope. So I was pulling people in, and we were having those hard conversations because I can relate greatly with Marines that are here. But I was still having to refer. Like, okay, what you could use is these resources, this medication, these things, but I'm unable to do that. Like, there's limits to my scope. The next step up a scope that gives the full autonomy of, okay, I can do everything. I could take you from beginning to end. We can get you treated, get you all the resources, and then you can fire me because you won't need me anymore. And that's my goal with everyone, right? And I had found that, and that's psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. And so my idea is that, setting myself, I'll do it while I'm in the military, but I'm coming up on my time to retire if I choose to, and that's what I want to do, is just continue this on in the civilian world, create some sort of setting where it's a safe place. So it's not just treating veterans, it's also knocking down the stigmas. And that's what I hope to spend the rest of my life doing, is just beating down the stigmas and showing that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to have these conversations.
And it sounds like you've already started doing this in your civilian world. You keynote speaker, which I assume is about this, around these topics, and then you also are a business owner. Which is that company touching on this as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea, what we're kind of setting ourselves up for, we fell into that too. That was just awesome. There was a huge need. So I run I'm one of the core leaders of a men's group at church. It's I think it's the largest Catholic men's group in the country. But
what was the name of that again?
That Man Is You. Yeah. And so we get a lot of requests from some of the auxiliary services for mentorship of young men and professional development. And, it wasn't something I was jumping at the opportunity to, but then as we kept getting these requests, I realized there's this drastic need of just authentic male leadership. Like, it's just not there. Again, authentic male leadership is rub dirt on it.
Especially in the space of like mental health and wellness and all of that. There's leadership in other areas, but men usually don't have much leadership here.
Exactly. So we kept getting calls to do that. And I was like, man, this is something we should build a team. And so, we had started a company called Execute Company. It's like you guys, we're in the building phase right now. But the idea with it, the overall gist of everything that I'm doing and everything I'm setting myself up while I wrap up the military career and move forward, is I want to have my own clinic where I can do what I just said, the autonomy, the full take you from beginning to end treatments and resources. But what about all those people that don't want to come into the clinic? What about all those people that you can't break down the stigma, or maybe they don't need clinical treatment? They just need some guidance. They need help achieving a goal. They need help bouncing back from failure. There are nurses out there that coach on grief. I mean, that's awesome. But all of these people have all their own individual services and businesses. So, I mean, would you have ever thought of Googling a grief nurse? Like, it's not often. But if I have a team that is, I have everyone right here Tell me what you need, a triage, if you will. What do you have going on in your life? What do you need? We can pair you with the right coaching team, the right people, the right mentors to achieve those goals. And if you need some treatment, I also have a psychiatric clinic, right? And vice versa. If we're treating you, but I realize like, hey, we're treating you for anxiety, but that anxiety is because your diet's terrible. You're not sticking to a fitness regimen and you've been stuck in the job that you hate for 10 years. Let's work on that too. Go over and talk to them and let's get you set up. So it's really trying to create two things that feed each other. And that's how it all kind of came to be. And then the keynote speaking was just me having conversations like this and people going, that sounds like a great idea. I want you to come talk to our organization. And that's how that went.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Really like hitting it from both sides. And I love the idea of building a team of people. That's actually something that we're working on doing as well. It's part of, I explained the model a little bit earlier, but of bringing people together from these different areas of health. We call it the 7-part person. It's a model of like all the different kind of spheres of someone's life. And then how do you bring practitioners in who specialize in those different areas as a team rather than as competitors?
Yeah.
Oftentimes they're like, oh, you don't need that sort of thing. You need this sort of thing. And we'll work that together. But a person is a whole person and they have all these different areas of life. And if you can, like you said, if you can coordinate those people together as a team and even stack their treatment, like understanding that first you might need this therapeutic change, and then that kind of leads into this life habit change or this dietary thing, and understanding how all of these things connect. Relationship coaching might come after that, and how all of these things integrate and work together, and being able to lead someone, okay, this is where you're at. How do you, here are the different people who can help you, and here's maybe what your path might be to work forward through that team. I love that you're doing something like that. It's immense. And I think that's where, obviously, because that's something similar that our company is doing, but I think that's where the industry is going, where you bring those people together and you have more of a holistic practice for a person to be able to deal with the whole issue rather than just kind of one symptom of it.
What's funny about the industry right now, though, is we're at this weird gray area where it's like everybody's either all for medicine or everybody's all anti-medicine,
Yeah.
And it's finding those few that are like, we're talking the holistic, like, hey, you're dealing with a lot right now. You just dealt with a traumatic event. You have some severe anxiety, whatever. Here's some medication to get you over that hump, but we're not stopping there, right? This isn't let's stop there and we'll just treat you for that with that medication until it stops working, and we'll switch the medication until that one quits working. No, it's let's actually focus on the problem. And we could talk about this all day, but it's a lot of it is, while of course it's socioeconomic statuses and things like that, but it's also diet, fitness, just people's happiness and life. There's a lot of factors that go into it that you can bring everyone together on. So no, I do. I like that idea. What's funny is all of these organizations are starting to emerge, but how much are we talking? How much are we actually getting together and being like, this works, this doesn't? If you do all the research, well, you're one man with research. But if we get 100 companies together, we could grow it a lot faster. And so I think that it's great that we're getting messages like this out there. And I never use social media, but LinkedIn has brought me together with so many awesome people. I mean, people are hitting me up with apps and all these things. They're like, I love what you're doing. I have an app for that. And you look at it, it's like, this is a legitimate thing. I mean, this is great. Building that network.
Maybe you can show me how to do that, because I'm just now breaking into the LinkedIn side of things. I'm on YouTube, but I'm just breaking into that and trying to figure it out. So that's awesome. I'm glad you're seeing that side of success. All right. So let's say someone is watching this today and they are struggling, kind of like you mentioned a little bit ago. They have a hump to get over and they have no idea where to go from here. What would you say for someone maybe like a 1, 2, 3 for them to find some peace today.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into the longer term goal later.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, that is an easy question with a simple answer. People have an innate desire to help people, right? If your phone, or if you're watching this right now and your phone rang and somebody says, I need some help, you're going to do it. I mean, that it's not what the media puts it out to be, that all people are evil and we're all against each other. People have an innate desire to help you, and they will. Step one, if you are struggling with something, is to tell someone, is to just type that text up, close your eyes, and hit send. That's step one. Get it out there. Let someone else know, because that person now will hold you accountable. You have someone that is there for you. And to even backtrack that, if you can't do that right now, then find that person, then change your circle. If you have 100 friends and none of them you're comfortable with sending a text saying, I feel like I'm drinking too much, I feel I'm having suicidal thoughts, you don't have friends. Change your circle, get a better circle and surround yourself with people that actually do care about you. But
and maybe even like I have experienced where there are often social media groups that you can join that specifically are for that sort of thing. So if you don't have perhaps friends in your personal circle, you could go look that up and post it there. Say, hey, I'm struggling in this way. I need help, or I just need someone to listen for a second while I put
those
this
have
up.
been awesome. Those are a game changer. They truly have been. I've heard that from so many people, that they've reached out to those groups and gotten the support they need. There's also hotlines. Those hotlines, a lot of times when I tell people this, you can kind of see that light glimmer in their eyes. Two things. One, those that work in mental health are struggling with mental health. Every therapist has a therapist. We don't choose this job because life was great and we're like, let's go help some people. Nope. All of us have seen the other side of the tracks, and we're here and we want to help you get over where we are. That's one. Two, with all of the people that man, I completely forgot what I was going to say. What was I talking about?
You're talking about the social media groups and how that's a game changer.
Yeah.
And then you kind of went into there being hotlines.
Yeah. So the hotline. So, all right. Sorry about that. So with the hotlines, all of those people are volunteers that volunteer for that. And all of them also have dealt with something. So when you call those hotlines, those are people that have been where you are. They've been in your shoes and they truly want to help you. So use those as well. But you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to admit when you're struggling with something. And that's what's really hard for people. That's what's really hard, is for people to realize, like, this, I'm legitimately struggling. I don't have control. I don't have control over substance abuse. I don't have control over these thoughts. That's hard for people to admit to themselves, and it's even harder for people to admit to others. So really stepping back and being honest with yourself and having those deep conversations, that's going to get you on the right path. After that, if substance abuse is your thing, like, go to an AA meeting. They are everywhere at all times. There's apps. There's one that's called
Read it online.
Yep, they're online. There's virtuals. There's a ton of options. So anyone who's struggling with drinking, there are networks, and I promise within 10 miles of you, there's probably 300 people that are just excited about helping you, because the 12th step of AA is to help you. That's their job. They want to help you. So give them the opportunity to help you.
And even if it's not alcohol, a lot of the things kind of transfer to different things. And there are groups dedicated to different forms of kind of medicating, not just alcohol, but there's a ton of those type of groups out there. I've been to some myself.
Yeah.
So first thing is reach out to someone, anyone, get that text sent.
Yeah.
Then start looking for start looking for these type of resources to begin to move forward.
Yeah. And I think anyone who isn't struggling, now's the time to start focusing on your own mental health. Most of us don't have these conversations or focus on these things until we're struggling or dealing with something. Everybody's dealing with something. Everybody, man, I told my wife, let's just use this credit card this summer. We'll look at it at the end of the summer. I didn't care. And then we looked at it at the end of the summer, and that's today. That's what I'm struggling. I'm like, what did we do? Everybody's dealing with something. But the thing is, if right now you start focusing on getting your own mental health in order, finding time to meditate. If you're believing God, then finding time for prayer. Spending that time for yourself to focus on yourself, giving yourself silence. Everybody fills every bit of their life with noise. Like, stop and decompress, especially on times like when you're coming home from work and getting home, like that drive. Just sit in silence, decompress, so that when you're home, you can be present with your family. And it's those things and those little techniques: getting up, setting a schedule, eating a good diet, exercising, having a good community, being a part of something that's bigger than yourself, feeling like you're part of something, feeling accepted. Those are all things that we can do right now that keeps us from ever falling into that. If you're doing that now, you're living a healthy lifestyle, you have a healthy network. And if you ever start to stumble, someone's going to be there to pick you up. The network I have now, I missed last Wednesday at 7 p.m. I got COVID. That was when it was one of the many times that we were supposed to meet. And I have a meeting at 7 p.m. This is with some guys at church. And then some of that bleeds over into some of the other meetings and things that I do. So I had missed 3 meetings. I didn't really reach out to anyone because I was sick. And my phone's going crazy. What's going on? Where are you? You okay? People don't have these networks, People wait until, like I did. I didn't have that network, but I do now. But people don't have those networks where when you start missing things and you start stumbling, people are going to be there to pick you up if you build that network and surround yourself with those people. So I think that is actually the most important thing that you can do. Even if you are struggling, just start leaning on people. I mean, I'm to the point now where as hard as I try to stumble, someone's going to be there to pick me up. I mean, I've had guys show up at my house. I've had guys show up at my work like, hey, you don't know how to answer your phone? Like, okay, all right. I'm doing okay, And so it's building that network.
And it kind of goes back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier with prehab, before deployment, before you get into a war zone, developing those relationships. And it might even be a good question to ask of your current relationships, even if you don't think you're going through anything right now. Could I go through something with this person?
Yeah.
Or could I go through something with anyone in my social network? And if not, maybe I need to start looking for someone like that, because it's coming at some point.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that brings up a whole other great topic. A lot of people, who do they lean on? They lean on who they're dating, who they're married. They lean on those that are closest to them. I've learned in my time, of course, I talk with my wife. I'm open. She knows everything. But if I look at my wife as my number one resource for me to call anytime I'm struggling with something, then that's the expectation that I'm setting for her for our conversations. Oh, he's calling me. He's having a bad day and this is going bad. Now flip that. And what I have now is I have friends, one in particular, we do it for each other. We just call and we just decompress. Like, I talk to him, he talks to me. This went bad today. This really sucks. We get it out. We have that conversation then. That way I'm not overburdening my wife with all the bad topics that are happening in my life. I can give her wave tops. I can say, yeah, this happened at work today. but I'm all right. I don't go into the hour-long conversation about every intricate detail like I used to. That right there has been monumental on having an actual friendship with somebody that you can trust to go through stuff with, that has your back and is there and is just there to just get it out and hear it and be there for each other. I mean, we make sure. He's called me twice since I've been on here because it's our time to talk, and I mean we make sure that we have that conversation daily, because it really has relieved a lot of stress in both of our marriages, and that's something I think everyone should focus on too. Is, am I overburdening my spouse with every intricate detail of my life? And if so, don't swallow it. But where else can I dump it? Because it doesn't bother him to the extent that it would bother my wife. He's not going to go home and lose sleep because I had a bad day at work. You know, my wife would. She would. She'd be upset because it just keeps compounding. She knows that the weekend's going to be terrible. Or I may slip up and drink again, right? But him, he's just there to have my back, you know. So that's also something that's really helped me out through on all fronts, on sobriety, on mental health, on just relationships, everything.
And I would even add just a touch to that, where sometimes having just one person, like, it feels like you're dumping a lot onto them, but if you have a couple people, you can kind of spread it out between them. And it's a lot easier for 3 people to carry your weight than it is for one person. So it's great to have one, but if you have a couple, then it's even less of a burden on them, and you're able to get everything that you need off your chest while not burdening them.
Yeah,
I've definitely found that to be valuable.
And with those groups, though, one thing that I really try to impress on people with those groups, say it's 6 guys, 6 girls, whatever. Are we expecting the person that's struggling the most to make the first move, to reach out first? And that, if you're going to have a network of friends, you got to play both parts. You got to be on both sides. So you got to reach out too. You know, you've got to take that first step. You've got to have those real conversations. And I found that early on that we would talk and I'd be struggling with 10 things. And he'd be like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm good, man. But no, I'm not good. Why am I saying this? You know? And it takes that further push that, hey, what's really going on? How's everything going? Have you been sleeping? How's your wife? Have you been spending time with her? What's your work-life balance right now? Start asking those questions and watch the answers flow. Watch the tears flow. Things are going to come. And once you break that and you have that, you become the person that reaches out and asks those questions. Whereas what we do, especially in suicide prevention, is we set up all these resources and all the hotlines, all these things. That's, hey, when you're struggling, when you're sitting at home drunk considering suicide, give me a call. No, they're not. They're not going to do that. I hope some do. I mean, you know, the suicide hotlines work, but what if we would have reached out to them that day? So that's something I really try to push, is if you're going to build this network, like, take some accountability for the other person too, and reach out and say, hey, I haven't heard from you today. Hey, how is everything? You know, and then make a mental note of it and then follow up on it the next day. Hey, yesterday you were struggling with the time you were spending at work. Did you get any more time off today? You know, have those, because you're making that person feel all of their feelings warranted, and they're going to tend to open up with you more. And then when they are struggling, you've just opened that door that they're going to jump through. Yeah,
absolutely. And even on a kind of a practical note, it's often really easy to get bogged down and get sidetracked with everything that's going on in your life. I make use of technology. Anytime I figure out that someone is going through something, I often make a note, like, hey, reach out, remind me every 2 weeks to reach out to so and so, that sort of thing, or ask them about this or something like that. And it kind of takes the mental burden off of trying to remember everything, but it still reminds you, okay, touch point, reach out to them, move forward with that. So I definitely make use of that a lot.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because it's like good customer service, right? But if you take good customer service and you put it into real life application, like it works and it makes people feel wanted and it makes people want you. It's just good customer service. It's servant leadership, really. I mean, even if you're doing it with your friends, you're practicing some sort of servant leadership of I care more about you than whatever else it is. I care more about you than the organization. Like I'm reaching out to you because I care, you know, and anybody that works under me, like that's the standard that I set is this place will be here. These walls will still be standing tomorrow, but like, how are you going to be, you know? So yeah, no, that's awesome.
So let's get into some resources that someone could utilize if they are starting their struggle or starting their recovery, starting their self-healing journey. What are some things that have helped you? What are some things that have helped other people? We've covered a couple of these like AA and a couple of resources that were key on your journey, but are there any books, any websites, any resources, any speakers, anything that have helped you or that have helped the people that you help?
Yeah. I mean, I'll always stick to AA like that. You know, I dropped one of the AAs very quick, the anonymity. You know, AA is phenomenal. I think everybody should have a 12-step program. And there's a lot of other 12-step programs out there as well. So find a 12-step program if you need one. It doesn't have to be alcohol, like you said. I mean, there's a bunch of them out there. And there's also programs out there for spouses that are struggling, like Al-Anon, Ar-Anon, things like that. That are great.
I've been a part of those. They were really helpful.
One thing, so I tried to listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of times you get in this feeling, and this is probably not the best way I should put it, but it feels like a pity party all the time when you get into some of these podcasts or even AA meetings. You know, it's just like, oh, I was terrible and I'm this, and I didn't like that. You know, because what I needed was a more positive inner critic. I didn't need a negative inner critic. I already got that one down. I've been working on that for 35 years. I need positive. And so I actually found that what was helping me a lot, one, meditation in church. Go to church. If you haven't tried it out, go to church. You'll get a lot of answers there. You really will. But outside of that, I would listen to motivational speakers. So not speakers that gave me more insight to all of my problems and life struggles. That was great. Do that. If you're confused at your diagnosis and you're early in your stages and you want more information or clarification, or just understand that a lot of other people are dealing with the same things you are, then great. Those are great. But me, I like the motivation stuff. Like on my way to work, just a quick 5-minute clip from someone that is going to yell at me and tell me, hey, like you got this today, you know, like that's what I needed. It was funny because coming from my background, I still needed that. And I promise there's other guys that do too. Like I still needed some, hey, you're in a slump right now. Like, oh, well, pick it up, do better, get through this day, you know, and that stuff really helped me. As far as books, especially for the veteran community, there's a book called Tribe, and I cannot remember who it is written by, sadly. It is an awesome book, a must read for anybody who has ever heard, breathed, or been around the words PTSD. It is about coming back and rejoining society after combat. That's what it's about. And it is about the tribe. It is about how we receive our veterans and how you return to society. And it talks about how other tribes, like indigenous tribes, don't struggle with a lot of the mental health issues that we struggle with. And it is due to their focus on each other and their network and the fact that they've always been doing this. They live and breathe around each other every day. If someone's struggling, they're right there with them. So that book Tribe is great because it speaks to everything that I found
it here. It's Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging by Sebastian Younger.
Yeah, that's a must read.
Find that on Amazon, and we'll link that in the description.
Yeah, that's a must read. That's probably one of the best recommendations of books that I can get. And then a lot, without giving any recommendations, because I'm looking at a bookshelf full right now, finding diets that promote positive mental health. Just Google that. Find diets, find foods that promote it, but do the flip side of the research too, and find diets that negatively impact your mental health. Find out what your caffeine's doing to you, what your bread's doing to you, because a lot of things, feeling good in the morning and feeling good throughout the day has a great impact on how your day is going to go, and how you're going to handle certain situations. And so I really try to focus a lot on diet when talking about these things too. I did the carnivore diet for a long time. What's that? Paul Saladino, Dr. Saladino wrote that, the carnivore diet. And it was phenomenal. It's very challenging. It's tough to stick with, but I had so much clarity. I felt great. It was pretty good. And I stuck with it for like 3 months. I think it was good. And then lastly, kind of a controversial thing is fasting. So doing some fasting tends to bring a lot of mental clarity for people, whether it's intermittent or doing, trying to work up and get a 72-hour fast, because it gives you that gratification of, I just accomplished something. Plus you might lose a couple pounds. That's always a positive, but you really reset yourself. And when your focus goes from, it's really cool when your focus goes from taxes, bills, stress, work, to the clock ticks around and all of a sudden your mind's like food, water. And as time goes, just nothing else matters. You're in this mode of that's it. And all of those things that you were struggling and suffering with go away for a little while. And it's really a pretty great feeling. So I highly recommend people trying some fast too.
That's awesome. And it's something that I don't think that a lot of people don't kind of assume nutrition and mental health. Like when you get into the field, when you start working with it, they absolutely are connected, biochemistry in your brain and all of that. But it's definitely not something that a lot of people kind of automatically, intuitively associate. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's awesome.
Yep. That and exercise as well. So yeah. All of the great endorphins that are released during a cardio workout. That's a whole different podcast.
Right. Yes. Maybe we'll have that one in the future. But well, it has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for coming. This all the way from the war in Iraq to your lowest point, and then how you started climbing and how you started bringing other people with you. And I look forward to what you're doing in the future with this. The company that you started, you said it was Execute?
Yep, Execute company.
And the vision for that company and for the keynote speaking that you're doing, the message that you're getting out there, where can people go for either of those things? Can they just look up Execute Company or?
Yeah, executecompany.com.
Okay, Execute Company. Yeah. And then for keynote speaking, where do people go for that sort of thing?
It's still on there right now, and then also on my LinkedIn. You can always look me up on LinkedIn. Well, yeah, it'll actually be called Execute Mindset. We brought it up and pulled it back down, so that will be up again soon. But it'll be executemindset.com once the speaking's back up. But we're already booked through, I think, half of 2025 right now. So yeah,
nice.
That's
Congrats.
great. Yeah, thanks.
And we will definitely try to link that stuff in the description afterward, so people can go there, look you up. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate it.